Hey peeps, it's good to be back, and this week's episode is about all of my favorite sports movies that I watched as a kid. So let's get into it. Alrighty peeps, so a few things back in the 90s made my day more than being able to get off school and that Friday night go out to Blockbuster or whatever was your favorite video store back in the day and be able to browse the kids section and pick something that you wanted to watch and then return it, as the weekend was over. So this is going to be a list of my favorite movies that I picked at the time. But this first part is only going to be about sports movies because I lived for that. Okay. I got into football when I was young. It was something that I watched with my dad. And even still to this day, it's something that I enjoy because it was a thing that me and my brothers and my sister and I all kind of agreed on. So it's kind of a nostalgia there. Even when we got a Sega Genesis, we only had 2 games, Sonic 2 and Madden 96 of all things. So just know that it was a very sad time for all of us when John Madden passed away a couple years ago. So there's that. But this list is probably not going to include any overly animated movies because I'm going to make a part 2 of this for another time. So, but growing up in the 90s, there's a couple things that I miss, and I'll be going over that today. All right. So first things first, I was able to do a lot of browsing at Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, or whatever your preferred video store was at the time, because there is a pretty big age gap between me and the rest of my siblings. And so when they were younger, they had to watch what I wanted. It was a good time. Then they got older and started picking their own thing, and I was sad about that. But one of the first things I remember going into the video store asking my mom to get was the Mighty Ducks. And a lot of people always ask me, to this day, I get the question of, why do you watch hockey, or when did you start watching hockey? And it's always entertaining to me because, the Mighty Ducks had a big kind of impact on kids my age, not just me, kids my age. And the NHL team, the Anaheim Ducks, started as an expansion team bought in by Disney. So, but you would have to watch the NHL to know that. So, but anyway, I remember getting the video for the Mighty Ducks and watching it religiously. I remember watching it every time it came on the Disney Channel. And I just knew I wanted to be a duck. And it was a big deal because they had, black kids that looked like me. They had girls that were playing sports. And up until that point, it wasn't all that cool for you to be a girl into sports in my neck of the woods. And then particularly to be black and into hockey, that wasn't a thing that people knew anything about. That's changing as time goes on, but not as fast as you think. Because again, I still get that question. But I wanted to be a duck. And the 3 movie series, which I wrote up a blog post on, but it was interesting to me that the District 5 kids, they really had no kind of equipment or no sponsorship or things like that, but they had parents that really cared about them and wanted them to succeed. But, it's always a game of politics. And as an older person, you look back on that and you see how all of that plays out for other less fortunate people. But Gordon Bombay getting drunk and having to coach a Pee-wee team, even saying that seems weird. So I don't know that would be anybody's punishment in a real court of law, but he gets to coach a Pee-wee team, and he talks about, oh man, they suck. Yeah, that's why you're their coach, you know? And I distinctly remember like one of the kids had like a football helmet and random things that they can try to be a part of this team. And he gets, you know, sponsors, and, you know, after he pulls his head out of his butt and, you know, different things. And he actually teaches them how to play the game of hockey and have fun and win and not just be counted out. So it was a big thing about, you know, teamwork and being part of a team. And for the longest time, it was always something I wanted to do. You know, after being a ninja, if you've listened to my last episode. So fun times. But I lived in the South, so there was no place for me outdoors to learn how to ice skate. And my parents didn't really have time to take me ice skating. I remember being 9 and having to learn how to ice skate, and I had no clue what I was doing. So I often wonder what the training for that movie looked like, but it sparked my interest in watching hockey up to that point. And I think the first team that I started watching after the movie, like I would turn on the TV when I lived in Massachusetts and see the Rangers play and things like that. And I was like, that's my team. It's still my team to this day. So there you go. Goldberg, Adam Banks, Charlie Conway, Russ Tyler and his knuckle puck, they all paved the way for me to be a hockey fan like I am today. So I might get one of those new Ducks jerseys just cause. We'll see what happens. But anyway, they come together. They defeat their rich counterparts. And that's always like throughout the series is like their main nemesis is like richer, think they're better than them, that sort of thing. But the kids love playing it, and it was fun to see a bunch of different people all together hanging out, you know, playing a sport. Nobody cared that you were a boy or a girl or whatever it was, and then just decided to get together and have a good time. And at that point in my life, that was really all my life centered around, you know, watching movies to entertain yourself, going outside, playing a pickup game, and having a good time. So, of course, D2 comes available, and they're now representing Team USA on a grand scale. So they get new teammates added to the team. We get another Bash brother, because if you have to ask, you know, Fulton Reed has always been my favorite character. And the fact that they gave him, you know, a counterpart to go along with him was great. I enjoyed that. And it entertains me that in the first part of the movie, the two of them don't like each other. And then they're like practically inseparable for the rest of the movie. So in the first movie, Fulton spends a lot of his time defending the Ducks from bullies. So that always wins me over. So it is what it is. Team Iceland, big bad Team Iceland. They think they're better, but they don't win. So that's always a thing. There's always a motivating speech, and then they have to switch to Ducks jerseys, you know, and then they win in the end. So, and then of course in D3, there's, you know, school change and all of that. High school is a bit different. Everything is a bit different. There's only one Bash brother. Who decided that? It was an awful, awful, awful idea. So, you know, it is what it is. But they managed to hold their own as things change and and continue to be a team and continue to be the team to beat. So that's always my go-to kids movie that I rally behind to this day. I miss living in cooler weather during the winter time. So I used to look to that like, I want to do what they did. However, that's not a cool thing to say in the hockey community, right? So I used to say to people like, what got you into hockey? Like people who had always been watching hockey. And I would say, oh, I used to watch the Mighty Ducks. They immediately think that you're an idiot. So, and to that I say, what person goes into anything and believes everything that they've got from a kid's movie? But, you know, the more you spend on the internet, the more you're never surprised by anything. So, but yeah, I've stopped saying that to people more and more. But I would figure that as a person my age, I used to watch movies back in the day, that was one of the movies that probably got me hooked. So there's that. All right. So next on the list would have to be The Little Giants. And as I said, football was always my forte. Go Cowboys. I say that now with a heartache that comes with being a Cowboys fan. But one of my favorite things has always been beating up on my dad with the team that he really can't stand. So the Cowboys have always been my team because he always hated them. And even when you were playing Madden with him, he would say, like, you have to know how the play is designed to be run, or else you're not going to beat me. And it was very hard to beat dad back in the day in anything. So, you know, even now when I'm watching a game and I'm like, oh, they're running such and such a defense, or they're doing such and such on offense, people always ask me, like, how do you know that? I mean, I played Madden with dad, so that's how I know. But anyway, went into the Blockbuster, picked up The Little Giants, and as an older person, it still kind of holds up. You know, it's reminiscent of a particular time in my life, especially as a little girl who enjoyed sports, but you weren't really allowed to play certain sports that you enjoyed because that was a boy sport. In the beginning of the movie, Becky, whose nickname is the Icebox, that's badass. No matter how talented she is, she's not chosen for her uncle's Pee Wee football team. Now, this is Pee Wee. But if you were raised in the South like me, you know, any reason to play football, that gets us going down here. So, especially where I lived in Atlanta. So, it didn't matter how talented she was. It didn't matter that her coach was her uncle. They were like, yeah, well, you're a girl, so you can't play. Which was way different than, you know, the Mighty Ducks. They just recruited anybody. And it was funny because when you watch the Mighty Ducks, they went up against teams that were all male teams, and they were the only team that was just put anybody and anything in a uniform. So, yeah, so the movie branches off basically because Icebox's character was cut from the team and she wants to play football. So she decides to get her dad to coach a Pee Wee team, even though he has no clue about anything sports wise. Shout out to Rick Moranis. And he decides to take all of the kids that were cut from the Pee Wee team, which was aptly named the Cowboys, and make his own team and try to coach them. And of course, Ed O'Neill's character, who plays, you know, Becky's uncle, I don't think he really cares what's going on there. He doesn't think this is a real team. and he knows his brother doesn't know what he's doing. So there's that. So there's a point in the story where they get this really big muscle-bound kid named Spike on the team, much because Becky's father lies about being the O'Neal that he's referring to, or excuse me, the O'Shea that he's referring to, that the father is referring to. And they figure out pretty quickly that this is not the team that they want to be on. So, because nobody knows how to run a play, nobody knows what play to run, whatever. And Spike ends up going to the Cowboys, and they decide that they're going to play the Cowboys and show that their team knows what they're doing, except they don't. So they're getting ready for the big game. And at that point, Icebox, Becky has developed a crush on her team's quarterback. And she's like, well, maybe he doesn't see me as a girl that he could be interested in. So maybe I should give up sports. So this is all, you know, a sideline existential crisis that I used to have too. Like, do I have to give up being sporty or loving the things that I enjoy in order to get other people's attention? But by halftime, her team is down 21 points, and she has to make a decision as to what she's going to do. So, but even before that, I think my favorite thing was the fact that the kids are down. They know they're not going to beat the Cowboys. What can we do to get out of this? You know, and the answer comes to you from, you know, John Madden, Emmitt Smith, Bruce Smith, Tim Brown. They all get lost and are brought to the kids to give different motivational speeches. The one that's my favorite is Bruce Smith's about intimidation. It's all about intimidation. He was right. So he would know, you know. But, you know, they try different things and they get uniforms and all different things. Because, again, this is a ragtag bunch of kids who don't know the first thing about football and don't have the proper equipment. So it's all about uniforms to make you feel like a team, you know? You know, after watching Spike demolish them and take shots at her friends, she decides that she's had enough of standing on the sidelines and being a cheerleader. I'm going to go out there and crack some heads. And it's my favorite line in the movie when Spike's dad is like, what's that cheerleader doing on the field? That's not a cheerleader. That's my niece Becky. And she's pissed. Yeah. Sis just went on ahead. She didn't even take off the cheerleading skirt. She just went on ahead, put the shoulder pads and the jersey on and the helmet and just went out there. Skirt, helmet, everything. Went out there busting heads. And it's my favorite thing to watch the final play, which they named the annexation of Puerto Rico. I'll never forget it. It is the weirdest play you've ever seen. But it is based on something else that you've seen in the NFL. So if you watch sports, who knows? But in the end, the Giants win, you know, after their motivating speech by their coach and after Icebox comes back and everybody on the team has something to brag about. So it was a good time. I think I probably rented that and the Mighty Ducks probably about 8 to 10 times. And then it used to come on TV. So anytime it was on TV, I used to watch that. And it was something that my brothers didn't complain much about because something sporty was on. So think after that, the movie that I had my mom rent a lot was The Sandlot. And my dad loved that movie. And so we watched it together a lot. I watched it alone a lot. It's not so much about baseball as it is a coming of age movie. But I have had people say to me like, I've never seen that movie, or I don't really like The Sandlot. And just know, I am judging you. But yeah, it's about a kid, 1950s, 1960s, somewhere in there. And he's talking about moving, his mom got remarried, and he's having a hard time coping with the fact that he's got a new stepdad, and he's kind of just in the house tinkering and doing different things, and he hasn't decided or figured out how to make friends. And she kind of pushes him, his mother kind of pushes him to go out and meet new people or different things. And as much as he loves baseball, everybody does, in this movie. At that time, it still is America's pastime. So the fact that he liked baseball was neither here nor there. He just didn't have a talent for it. And if you've watched the movie, you know that he used to try to go out with his stepdad and try to play catch, and he ends up with a black eye because he actually can't catch the ball. And they don't have any ice because the Iceman had not delivered the ice. And so he ends up having to put the raw steak on his eyeball. And I'll remember that to this day because I was like, ew. And then they, had it for dinner, so it didn't matter. But his mother really pushed for him to be, it's the summertime. You're a boy. You need to be out making friends. So he ends up at the baseball field with the kids, and the kids initially don't like him because he is a bit of a square, bit of a nerd. And there's nothing wrong with that, but makes it hard for you to meet new people if they don't get you. But Benny the Jet Rodriguez gave him a chance. And if you don't know who Benny the Jet is, I'm sad for you. They, assign him a spot in left center field. He has no idea where that is or what to do or how to catch a ball. His baseball cap is like 3 feet long. That thing is huge. And so they end up having to show him the ropes of this is what we do. This is how we play. And he gets the hang of it eventually. And then after that, he's never at home, which I wouldn't be either. It's the summertime. I don't have to do anything. I'm out of here. So he ends up at the baseball field a lot playing with friends. And he actually manages, trying to keep his friends to get an in with them after Ham hits a home run over the fence into the Beast's yard. And the kids all had a legend about the Beast being this wild animal that the neighbor kept that ate children and ate police officers and ate everybody. So they didn't go into the yard to get the baseballs. It was just lost, Well, he decides that he is going to steal the baseball from his stepfather. That stepfather has a trophy. It's got a baseball on it and it's signed. And he said, I'll go home and get it. So he goes home, he gets it, and they're playing with it, and somebody hits a home run. It's over the fence. Listen, I got to go get that ball. And they're not understanding. Listen, you can't go get the ball. The Beast is over there, man. You got to kiss that ball goodbye. And he's like, no, I really got to get that ball. It's my stepdad's ball. He didn't know I took it. And you guys don't understand. It was signed by some woman. And they were like, woman, some woman, what woman? Babe Ruth? And they all freak out and they're trying to figure out how to get the ball back. And then it goes into this whole thing where they're trying to like keep him out of trouble by buying a baseball and signing Babe Ruth to it and trying to figure out how they're getting this ball back. And they've done everything they possibly can and they cannot get this ball back. But in the way that kids' minds work, they never think to themselves, just go and ring the doorbell and see if he'll get it for you. They're like doing everything under the sun. And he's got all of the kids in a panic trying to get this ball back because it is, at this point, a precious heirloom, So in the end, Benny decides he's going over the fence to get it. And that's how real friendships are made, people. He bought a new pair of PF Flyers. He's going to go get the ball, get back over the fence, and it's all going to be good. Well, the fence ends up falling down and the beast ends up off of the leash and ends up chasing Benny all the way through town. They realize A, that the beast is a girl, and B, she's a bit sweeter than they gave her credit for. She has apparently never eaten any neighborhood children. And James Earl Jones is the next door neighbor, R.I.P. him. And he says to them, you could have told me. I would have went and got your baseball. And of course, he's blind, but they had to bring the dog back to him because she had gotten off the leash or whatever. And he says, oh, your dad is going to be very upset that you stole his baseball. And I don't know there are people who have never heard or never watched a sport that know who certain people are. You know what I mean? And I feel like Babe Ruth is one of those people. And so for him to be like, oh, I stole this baseball and didn't know who signed it, I always thought that was weird. Even for me, like I wasn't a kid who watched baseball all the time. I knew who Babe Ruth was, but whatever. So anyway, he gets a baseball from James Earl Jones's character, who's like signed by like everybody that was on Babe Ruth's team at the time, and Babe himself included. And he takes it home. He's still grounded. And then he kind of talks about like being a sportscaster and how Benny made it to the MLB, and they're watching each other. It was a great coming of age baseball movie. Still my go-to. And I do use it to judge people. Like, is this person worthy of being my friend? What do you think about The Sandlot? I did have a friend say to me, like, I never liked that movie. I was never interested in it. And like, they were moved down my list mentally. There's certain things that certain sayings and certain memes that come from different things that if you don't know where the meme or the saying is from, AKA, you're killing me, Smalls, then I do judge you. But anyway, great movie. Still holds up to this day. Another series that I used to watch as a kid, which really leans into me wanting to be a ninja, as I kind of touched upon in my Ninja Turtles blurb, the last podcast episode, was the Three Ninjas. So you had 4 movies: the Three Ninjas Kick Back, the Three Ninjas Knuckle Up, and High Noon at Mega Mountain. And it was so funny to me because this woman had married this man and had 3 sons, and she allows her father-in-law to teach them the art of ninjutsu, which I think could be good or bad. I don't know. And depending on like if you wanted to look at the movies as, as they are, probably not the best idea because they always seem to be in the middle of something. But as a kid, I wanted my grandfather to teach me the ancient art of something, but I wasn't that lucky. So I had to watch the movies instead. So 3 brothers, Rocky, and he's the oldest. And he's given the name Rocky because supposedly he's as strong as granite and a level-headed leader. And so, his trademark color was green. Then you had Colt, who is the middle child. And it was because he was fast and free like a wild horse. And he is short of temper and the most sarcastic. And he stood out to me the most. And his trademark color was blue. And then you had Tum Tum. And of course, he was given the name Tum Tum because his energy begins and ends with his stomach. He's known for his large appetite and fondness for sweets, and could very well have been any anime main character, and his trademark colors were yellow, orange, and red. So it seemed like a way for him to, the grandfather to, kind of relate to them and teach them something. But for some reason, they were always in the middle of something. Living in California, you think, how much trouble can these 3 brothers get into? But, it is what it is. In the first movie, they see that their grandfather ends up in a confrontation with one of his ex-students, and they have to step in to try to defend their grandfather, even though, they end up kidnapped, and it was all of these things. And so it was just a bunch going on. But my favorite thing was the fact that they kept beating up grown people. There was this notion that because they were kids, it wasn't that big of a deal to try to get them to do whatever. And then they would end up like beat up. And then somebody wanted to pull a knife on like an 8-year-old. It was weird. So, yeah, 3 ninjas. My personal favorite was 3 Ninjas Knuckle Up, where they have to save an indigenous tribe from a wealthy toxic waste dumper. And I was like, who came up with this storyline? I watched it because as a kid, you didn't really have much else, so. But the older that I got, I was like, why were they always like in the middle? Like they had a friend in need and we have to defend them from motorcycle gang and renegade cowboys, So they had to, steal a floppy disk and expose people. And in the 90s, your reign of terror began and ended with a floppy disk. Okay. So there was no iCloud account. So there was that. So, but yeah, that was one of the things that I can probably see myself watching with my niece and nephew. They'll probably think it's funny. All of the old references and things like that. So, but yeah, 4 movies from the 90s. And the brothers changed like 2 or 3 times, which I didn't particularly care for, but I don't usually watch movies where they drop characters and just kind of replace them. I don't like that really, but in the 90s, it was a thing that happened. So it is what it is. And a lot of times you had people play in movies that were kind of the same genre. So that was their thing. Like, Jesse Hall's character was also in, not his character, but he was also in The Sandlot and different things. And the guy that played Ham in The Sandlot was also in a movie called The Big Green, about soccer. So, a lot of that going on. Good times. One of my favorite DComs was Brink, and that introduced me to inline skating as a sport. I think before that, I don't think I ever remember watching the X Games. It wasn't until me and my friends talked about it in middle school and watched it every time it was on that I started watching the X Games religiously. And now it's sad because inline skating has been kicked out of a lot of things, but it's still super, super cool. But if it wasn't for Brink, I probably wouldn't have gotten into like motocross and Tony Hawk and BMX and different things, because it started really with Brink. And Brink's parents weren't really all that rich, so he's a soul skater. And I remember this movie came out in like 1998, and they are everything opposite of Team X Blades, which is a semi-professional team. They get paid. They're doing different things. The soul skaters skate for the fun of it and not the money. Well, Brink basically is, completely against, the leader, Val, who leads Team X Blades, and they always are getting into something at school. And they decide on the first day of school that they're going to race on school grounds. And I often wonder like where these kids went to school, because it seemed like they got away with a lot of things that I would never get away with at school. And I mean, they're racing all over with their skates and everything in their bag. And I'm like, how is this even possible? Anyway, they end up being caught and suspended. And like, who gets suspended on the first day of school? So he's pretty much grounded. He has to, get a part-time job and things like that. And this is when he learns that his father has been hurt on the job, and he's not sure that they can make ends meet. Like, as a kid, you're figuring out that your parents don't have enough money to make ends meet, right? And he wants to do what he can do to get his family back where they need to be. Well, he ends up having to join Team X Blades because he has the talent to do so, and they're paying good money. But he spends a lot of time trying to keep it secret from everybody, his parents, his friends, because he wants to remain being a soul skater. But they find him out, and he's trying to juggle 2 jobs. He has a part-time job that his dad got him at a dog grooming business. He also has a job, the X Blades and all of that. And he's trying to juggle all these things. It all comes to a head when they catch him at an invitational skating, prior to an upcoming competition. And his friends all disown him. High school is about belonging to the right group of people. So, But anyway, it's a long story short. He ends up having to, beg to be back on the Soul Skaters team. He gets them sponsorship through his dog grooming job. And it's really, really a great movie. And in the end, he realizes that, you know, a lot of people have, you know, different things going on. It's when you band together and be with friends and, you know, take on the world and all that. So, you know, very Disney-esque, but it's pretty intense in there. It makes you want to grab some blades. And it really did make me want to get some inline skates, but my mother was totally against it. She got me a bike instead, and I contend that that was probably better. I probably would have hurt myself, but I probably could have did it. Who knew? You never know. So if you haven't seen Brink, again, I'm judging you, but it is available on Disney Plus, like a lot of the DComs are, and maybe there'll be a podcast episode about that because we have to talk about Johnny Tsunami, you know. And because I mean that was a movie about surfing and snowboarding, and I mean there's not enough time here to talk about it, but just know that was another notch in the X Games belt, to which I kind of still watch to this day. There are a lot of snowboarders that I know to this day because I watched Johnny Tsunami. And just like the Mighty Ducks, that's not a thing I tell people. So I'm letting you guys in on a secret. So there's that. That leaves Rookie of the Year, which is another baseball movie. And at the time, I think there was a lot of movies that came out that were surrounded by baseball one way or another. There's this kid who ends up with a broken arm, and as it comes out of the cast, they figure that he could pitch in the major leagues because, you know, his injury or the way he's healed from his injury has made him a badass pitcher. And that's only something that could happen in a 90s sports movie, because who would think up something like that anyway? Right? And it's this whole thing about, you know, him, you know, playing on a baseball team. He's barely 5 feet tall. He's barely a teenager, and trying to juggle like being friends and having a real full-time job and all of these things. And then dealing with his stepdad, and who wants to be his manager and tries to trade him to the Yankees and all of these things. It was a very interesting, weird movie. I think he ends up playing for Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the medical reason is that the tendons in his arm have healed a little too tight. And I think he's able to throw like 100-mile-an-hour fastball. And so they have him, you know, pitch. Well, it starts off slow. It's unbelievable, as I've just explained. And they managed to make it kind of a feel-good movie. But it is a bit more about baseball than The Sandlot was. So I watched that a few times too. And I think I'm going to end this episode talking about one of my favorite movies, Space Jam. I remember Space Jam coming out. I was in the 4th grade. And the movie theater was always expensive, especially if you had several siblings that needed to go to. So I didn't see too many movies in the movie theater because it was an expensive thing to do. So you had to wait for it to come out on VHS and see it at Blockbuster. But I made my mom get Space Jam because everybody at school had gone to see it. And at some point we had our fourth grade teacher was trying to make sure that we behaved. And so we would, do different things and gain letters to the titles of our favorite movies so that we could watch them on Movie Friday. Space Jam was one of them. So, Michael Jordan was in it. All of my favorite Looney Tunes characters was in it. And there's something about challenging Martians to a basketball game, which is something only Bugs Bunny would do. One of my favorite Bugs Bunny shorts is Baseball Bugs, so it makes sense. I can see him doing it. And telling the whole Looney Tunes crew, we're going to cream these guys, and then figuring out, these Martians went out and stole talent from all of the biggest basketball players, so we may have some trouble here. And now we needed to kidnap the greatest of all time. So just imagine you're out there on the golf course, which I can't imagine because I have no clue why golf is so calming to people. It works for y'all, and I appreciate that. But just imagine standing out there and somebody disappears into a golf hole. So, and then there's nobody where to be found for weeks at a time. My personal favorite is Bugs and Daffy sneaking away to gather things from Michael's house, and the kids being like, "Oh, hey, it's Bugs Bunny." Yeah, well, Dad keeps the sneaker in here, So, good time, had by all. And of course, in true Looney Tunes fashion, they do win. They do return all of the stolen talent to all of the basketball players that deserve it. It is what it is, And it was such a great movie that I watched like over and over again. And I rewatched it with my siblings. I even watched the newer version with LeBron James. The kids loved it, so I don't have any downside to that. Everything gets remade at one point or another, so it is what it is. But anyway, I loved it. And those were my favorite sports movies that I watched as a kid. So, in takeaway, I am a lifelong hockey fan, lifelong X Games fan, motocross, BMX, all of that. Because of certain things I used to watch as a kid. Although it's not too cool to say that in adult spaces, because for some reason, people think that because you watched the Mighty Ducks, they think that you can take penalty shots with no helmet, because that's what Charlie did at the end of the first movie. Or that hockey players really use the line V. No. They do believe you think that, but in the end, who takes cues from kids' movies? Or movies, period. But anyway, that's all I have for today, peeps. Please let me know if you have other movies that you watched as a kid over and over. I'm probably going to do another episode that's probably about animated movies, and we can go over that. But until next time.